happy birthday. Then we also are presenting this recently published volume of the Srila Prabhupada tributes. This book is compiled every year with offerings, homages from all of Srila Prabhupada's disciples who write in, and compiled very wonderfully by devotees, mostly from South Africa. They're working on this. So, let's present this to Srila Prabhupada. Okay. And this will be here for those who'd like to go through it. And now, our own Vyasa Puja book. So, again, I'd like to ask if you can come up and present this. So this is our first attempt to invite everyone in our community to offer, to propose a homage to Srila Prabhupada, and then compile them into our own handmade Vyasa Puja book. This is a tradition that actually began in our society in the very first years, and we're trying to revive them. So, just quickly, we have here in the book, there are, well, there's 82 pages, but actually, I think it's the number, I didn't quite count, the number of offerings is somewhere in the range of 60 or so, because there are quite a few devotees who did nice long offerings. Long or short, it's all very wonderful. So, we will have, according to the time, we will be able to hear some of those offerings. This is the contents and what page they're on. So, that will be our program this morning. We have all the way until about 1 o'clock to be able to do this. We do expect some of our senior devotees perhaps arriving a little later. So, that gives us a little time as a community, as the ashram, to do some of our own glorification. And I'm going to particularly be asking those who have proposed. So, since we have some of our senior members present in the model, we may start with those devotees, and then as the time permits, we will invite the members of the community here who have proposed and made their offerings to read them out. Okay? Asura, yes. Would you like to be our first speaker? And you do have an offering in the book if you want to read it.
I do have, that's the abbreviated version.
Oh, that's the abbreviated.
I can read the long version.
Okay, so
that's the abridged version.
Please.
Thank you. It was a day.
Yes.
There we sit. Quick.
Okay. And of course, this book will stay here. It's be here for at least next week, so that devotees can come and read the offerings.
And you told everyone that they're, of course, welcome to browse through that.
Yes. We'll be here for next week.
Okay, this one's not.
Can you turn this on?
Yeah.
There's an online audience. Hare Krishna online audience. Dear Srila Prabhupada, please accept my prostrated obeisances in the dust of your lotus feet. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharani Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschakcha Deshatarane Chaksudan Diloje Janme Janme Prabhu Se Divya Gyan Hriday Prokashita Prema Bhakti Javoite Abhija Vinasa Jate Vede Gai Jaharat Charito. Every day I listen to your heavy words of knowledge and meditate on your instructions while praying for your continued guidance to keep this fallen servant on the path back home, back to Godhead. By your Vani, I find the strength to remain faithful to serve your divine grace in any capacity that may be required. I find enthusiasm in the memory of your loving exchanges as you chanted Jai Radha Madhava in the assembly of ecstatic devotees, and then came down from your Vyasa and danced before their worshipful lordship, Sri Radha Govinda, in the Henry Street Temple. Yadi papi chardi dharma dure deshayaya mora senapati bhakti yayabe tatai. If some sinful people escape and giving up religious principles go to far-off countries, then my Senapati Bhakt will come at that time to give them Krishna consciousness. I am one of those sinful persons who became fortunate by your arrival in such a far-off country. And you are certainly Mora Senapati Bhakt, as predicted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Therefore, I am eternally, externally, internally indebted to their lordships for this chance to serve one so dear to Mahaprabhu as you. I can never hope to repay that debt owed to you in this one short lifetime. Therefore, my humble prayer is that I may take birth again and again wherever you are and serve in the shade of your lotus feet eternally. Yashi Devi Parabhaktir Yata Deve Tata Guru Tasyati Katitaryata Prakashante Mahatmanaha. Unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. Please bless me that I may stay in the association of those great souls who have such implicit faith in Guru and Krishna. They alone continue to faithfully propagate the mission of your divine grace, as you so clearly indicated in your 1958 Vyasa Puja offering, Viraha Astika, which defines your commitment to the mission of your beloved spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. From sea to sea, crossing the earth, penetrating the universal shell, all of us should unite in purpose and flood the lands with the inundation of Krishna-conscious preaching. One who tries to enjoy the assets of his spiritual master, Guru Bhogi, and one who renounces his Guru's order, Guru Tyagi, are two kinds of useless persons. But one who actually serves his spiritual master, Guru Sevi, will clearly understand all these things. There is only one all-opulent Supreme Lord. Therefore, if one's personal opulence increases, a true saintly person rejects it, knowing it to be the cause of a dangerous position in the material world. Understanding your concern in this regard, a foolish person knowingly drinks poison if he ignores these admonitions. Your position is not that of an ordinary person, and your instructions are not diminished by the passage of time. You wrote in the dedication of the Srimad Bhagavatam, for which you sacrificed so much to save the world, quote, to Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, my spiritual master, on the 26th annual ceremony of his appearance day. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. All glory to your divine grace, Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Astatarasata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. I beg to remain your follower, servant, Hansarupa Das Adhikari. On the occasion of the 126th, 125th birth anniversary of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Still not on.
Can we get this microphone working? Thank you very much. Could I lead as you come speaker, you would?
Pass the road.
You attach it here to this, and then you could do this. Okay.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastatya Deshatarine. So early in the movement on Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's appearance day, the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada to say something about Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Srila Prabhupada replied, "What can I say? He was a Vaikuntha man." So Srila Prabhupada, although appearing to be in the material world with us, was at all times transcendentally situated. So today, rather than present something philosophical about Srila Prabhupada's position, I will instead tell you some of the experiences that I had with Srila Prabhupada in the 1970s. So in 1975, this is before the New York Rath Yatra, there was a plan to have a big Rath Yatra in Philadelphia. And at that time, in the Brooklyn Temple, we had about 100 full-time devotees, about 80 brahmacharis of those 100 devotees. And the management decided they would rent some buses and take every devotee from Brooklyn, 439 Henry Street, to be with Srila Prabhupada at the Rath Yatra in Philadelphia. So at that time, I just became part of management there in Brooklyn. I was the book distribution Sankirtan leader. And our temple president, Gopi Janaballabha, called me into his office. He said, "Prabhu, we're so proud of you. You're making so much advancement." He said, "So we decided that you'll stay behind and take care of Radha Govinda, along with our new head cook, Agni Dev Prabhu, and our temple commander, Vipramukya Prabhu." So, needless to say, we weren't feeling too much ecstasy about this arrangement. We wanted to be with Srila Prabhupada. So, of course, the New York devotees were fortunate because Prabhupada would travel through New York quite a bit. So we saw Srila Prabhupada at least twice a year, sometimes more. He would come and stay for some time in Brooklyn. And at that time, hard to believe, but New York was the largest, most important temple in the world. So we were in anxiety. But we knew that our close friend, godbrother, another brahmachari at that time, Harikesh Prabhu, was traveling with Srila Prabhupada as Prabhupada's secretary. So we decided to make a call. I was the ringleader, being the most headstrong of the three godbrothers, brahmacharis at that time. So in those days, of course, we didn't have cell phones. We would call person-to-person collect. So this is a way of getting the right person on the phone without actually paying for the call. Then when the right person would come, they would call back. So Harikesh called me back. We said, "Look, we want to go to this is terrible. We need to be with Srila Prabhupada." So Harikesh said, "Look, you have to do what your authorities say." He said, "But just get them to agree to give you a van, that the minute, so the plan was the pujaris, we had to take care of Radha and Govinda, cook, do everything in the temple, but the main pujaris would come back in time to put Radha and Govinda to rest. So they would race back, and get back to the temple 6, 7 o'clock, take over from us. So he said, look, just get a van. Come down, I'll make sure you all get personal association with Srila Prabhupada. So needless to say, we drove down there that night about 105 miles an hour. And we got to the temple after 10 o'clock. And so also, you can imagine hundreds of devotees were there from all around Canada, all around the Northeast, Chicago, Boston, everywhere. You could barely find any place to even lay down in a sleeping bag on the floor. So the next morning was morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. Now, every devotee there wanted to go on the morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. So the temple at that time was a previous location to today. It was a large house, but a different location. It was in the middle of a long, long block. So Srila Prabhupada came out, got in a car, and the car behind him was all GBCs, sannyasis. At that time, Srila Prabhupada would make sure that GBCs and sannyasis had to travel with him in order to be trained by him. And then after that was a van. So as soon as Prabhupada came out of the temple, devotees raced for their cars, and they were going to get behind this, this caravan going, and no one knew where Prabhupada was going for the walk. That was kept top secret. Ravindra Prabhu was the president at that time. He was a very careful and intelligent manager. So they pulled out. As soon as the 3 vehicles pulled out, whole 8, 10 cars, vans started following, down. And we got to the end of the block. The first 2 cars kept going, and the van just stopped and blocked every single vehicle from getting off that block to follow Srila Prabhupada to the morning walk. But of course, we had inside information. We were actually really connected. We were waiting just past that block in our van. So we joined behind 3 brahmacharis in the van, and we followed Prabhupada to the park for the morning walk. Now, Srila Prabhupada was a genius on a level that'd be hard to explain without personally being with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada's policy, of course, we were felt very, very small in front of Srila Prabhupada. We were tremble with fear in Prabhupada's presence of making some offense. But Prabhupada enjoyed philosophical jousting also with his disciples. Prabhupada once said, I've traveled around the world 14 times, and I've never been defeated. So sometimes Prabhupada would have sannyasis, 3, 4 sannyasis. They would have to take the Mayavad position. Prabhupada would take the Vaishnava position, and they would argue. Prabhupada would defeat them. Then Prabhupada said, okay, you take the Vaishnava position, I take the Mayavad position. They debate, Prabhupada would defeat them. So, so on this morning walk, we were, of course, kind of hiding in the back because we really weren't supposed to be there. First thing I'll mention that was very unusual, at that time, in 1975, Srila Prabhupada was 80 years old. And in 1975, I was 20 years old. But when we were in the back chanting, but we would continually have to run to catch up to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada always seemed to move effortlessly, gracefully. We could say Paramhamsa, swan-like person. So he never appeared to be making an effort. But although he was very elderly and we were young boys, we were running to keep up with Srila Prabhupada on this walk. So on that walk, Srila Damodar Prabhu was there. He's at that time, was something very new, scientist devotee. And he and Srila Prabhupada were debating furiously for 40, 50 minutes. And I'd never heard anyone speak with Srila Prabhupada like this because I was not, I was a much younger devotee. And on that walk were all sannyasis, GBC men. What they were debating, we were all very serious, even the brahmacharis, pretty serious scholars of Srila Prabhupada's books, but none of us had any idea what they were debating about. To this day, I couldn't tell you what exactly they were, something very technical, very hard to follow. And Prabhupada was debating and wrestling philosophically, with Srila Damodar Prabhu. And then after a long, long time, then they took a break, and Brahmananda Prabhu was there. At that time, he was a sannyasi. He said, Srila Prabhupada, I have a question. He said, what does it mean that the spiritual master is not an ordinary man? Then Prabhupada stopped, turned, looked at all of us with a big smile. He said, it means he is not moved by these rascal scientists. So then, of course, the morning walk finished, and later in the day, Srila Prabhupada was having darshan. So at that time also, Harikesh Prabhu arranged, we sneak in the back, sit in the back of the darshan. And so this went on for a couple of hours. And this was a very exclusive thing. Again, it was the senior leaders and different kinds of invited guests. But Srila Prabhupada was very, very generous to meet with the Indian congregation. So they were generally, would be invited into these darshans. So at that time, Srila Prabhupada was sitting at his desk, with, as you see in like the museum here. And on one side was his Sanskrit scholar, Nitai Prabhu, and on the other side was Harikesh Prabhu. And Harikesh was quite an impressive scholar himself. Because we studied together, I can tell you that at one point he had memorized 400 verses, to give you an idea what kind of scholarship we're talking about. So they each had a Sanskrit reference book. And as Srila Prabhupada was speaking, he would quote from all different Vedic literatures, quotes that we were completely not familiar with, were not in any of Prabhupada's books. And when Prabhupada, as he was speaking with guests, he would be making a point, and then he'd quote something from all different Vedic literature, and then Prabhupada would very sternly turn to them and say, now find that verse. And they were furiously trying to find, what Prabhupada was quoting, and sometimes they found it, sometimes they didn't. And Prabhupada was very stern with them. This was not a friendly exchange. They were, Prabhupada was, with his disciples, Prabhupada was very strict, very strict. Afterwards, when Harikesh and I had a chance to talk a little, he was a little shaken up. He said, I can't believe it. Srila Prabhupada's quoting from every Vedic literature. We haven't even heard of some of these. They're furiously trying to keep up with Srila Prabhupada, these two scholars. So then, Ravindra Prabhu brought in, a devotee had joined, and he was initiated, but he had gone to a prestigious university. As you might know, Ravindra Prabhu was a pioneer in academic preaching, and his parents had come to meet with Srila Prabhupada. So, of course, we were all sitting on the floor. They came in, and they were middle-aged people. They weren't elderly people. But when Prabhupada saw them, that they were the parents of his disciple, Prabhupada stopped everything, said, you must bring them chairs. So they brought in two regular chairs, and they sat. And you could see right away that the mother was very impressed with Srila Prabhupada. But the father, he very proudly announced that he was an atheist. And he began to philosophically challenge Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada first began to gently explain how we're not the body, but this man persisted. So then Srila Prabhupada quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam how anybody who identifies with the body is no better than a cow or an ass. So then Srila Prabhupada smiled and asked the man, said, so what does that make you? So there was a beat of silence, and then the wife answered, he's a foolish ass. Then an Indian man, then an Indian man started debating with Srila Prabhupada about vegetarian diet. So he began to make points that for some nutritional reasons, this and that, and same thing, he began to persist. So usually Prabhupada was so gentle with the Indian people who would come, even if they knew nothing about Krishna consciousness. He'd ask them about their families and their kids and all these sort of things that we thought were mundane. But this man, he very quickly lost patience. And sitting next to him was Brahmananda Swami. Now at that time, I want to say respectfully that Brahmananda Maharaj was maybe, 275, 300 pounds, right? He was quite a large person. So Prabhupada suddenly said, you see this boy? He is pure vegetarian. And if I give him the word, he will crush you within 1 second. Srila Prabhupada ki jai! Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Vyasa, for all of that nectar. And we really appreciate it. We will have to ask speakers to try to keep their answers within the 10 minutes or so. Although that was really classic, so I think we flourished every minute of it. I'd like to ask if you'd like to come up and would you like to read it from here?
Prabhu, can we turn up the volume just a little bit for the senior citizens?
Okay, yeah, the volume can be turned up just a little bit. Oh, okay. And as you're getting seated, I just wanted to mention we have here to present to His Divine Grace the offering.
I couldn't really hear much over there. There's a problem that there needs to be a new sound system here.
Prabhupada
Most people are okay with it.
Yeah.
I have to go upstairs and hear it all.
Well, the thing is,
classes.
there's a reverberation, so if you sit further away from the
Srila
speakers,
Prabhupada
Yes.
was born
Yeah,
on
but
this
the
day of
ladies
September
can't speak.
1996.
Can't sit close.
no, I'm saying farther away. Oh, yeah.
Vaishnava family. Like this, these will all be shown to Srila Prabhupada. Follow, if you like, show them all to Prabhupada.
I'm not very spontaneous.
I think on Sunday also will be
Yeah, I think this you can.
tomorrow. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Oh, that sounds good. Yeah.
Is that good?
Hare Krishna.
Just keep it close to your mouth.
Okay. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Itanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschachata Zatane. My dear beloved spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, my Guru Maharaj, please accept my most respectful obeisances in the dust of your lotus feet on this occasion of celebrating your Vyasa Puja, 126 years. As a few years ago, our resident sannyasi, Chandrasekhar Maharaj, wrote, "Saints like you do something amazing, quite beyond our bounds. Our master has called and each hears his voice in a different time. A rare swan can bring out the timeless from the past. As you said to us, Srila Prabhupada, yeah, everyone has one goal, to serve you, Srila Prabhupada. You would be pleased at the dedication and strength of the devotees here. There is enthusiasm and happiness on every devotee's face. Especially in the early hours of the morning at Mangalarti, the devotees are dancing and jumping in ecstasy. To dance and chant joyfully is the real medicine for the material disease. The whole world can be united by this process. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda introduced this simply joyful process. It is especially potent when we chant with firm faith and conviction. You must be smiling with great pleasure at these transcendental activities in New York City and all over the world. You are my real shelter, Srila Prabhupada. You are with me every day of my life. You are the teacher by example. You have given me faith that I may attain Krishna Prem at some time. You have given us a straight talk about this crazy world. As you said, preaching is also not difficult because you don't have to manufacture anything. Everything is there. It is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order. Our first duty is to read your books in the proper mood, to remain steadily fixed in Krishna consciousness. It is wonderful to approach them with inquisitiveness, enthusiasm, and a prayerful attitude. Your transcendental Bhaktivedanta purports are ours to take as gifts from you with gratitude. Your books contain everything we need to know to get the spiritual strength to overcome the urges of the senses and the rascal mind. Life is meant for God realization and not sense gratification. I want to be full of yearning to please you. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to participate in the preaching mission of Lord Chaitanya. Our prayer is always to serve you and become more dedicated to your mission. So here I am in New York. We will go to your first temple tonight at 26 Second Avenue, a very small storefront where your chanting and preaching first started. It is a truly holy place where 56 years ago you started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Now there's chanting and centers in every country of the world. Srila Prabhupada, Savior of the world, Ki Jai, your worthless servant Tita Gunadasi. I just wanted to talk a little bit about personal pastimes with Srila Prabhupada. So when I first joined in New Zealand, and the speaker there, he would talk about having spiritual desires. I went up there, and Srila Prabhupada asked me the 4 regulative principles, and if I was chanting 16 rounds. And then he said, I want to give you a spiritual name. The name is Anita. And then he said, no, it isn't. It's not Anita. I'm going to change that to Atita Guna. And so then I realized he personally initiated me. So the next day we went to the Melbourne Botanical Gardens. It's like some of the most beautiful gardens in the world. And we ladies were in the back, so we couldn't hear anything. But the intelligent ladies would pick up the leaves that Prabhupada had stood on and keep them forever. But there was one girl, and she was a little bit adventurous. She grabbed me by the hand. She said, we're going down to the front, and we're going to be able to hear everything Srila Prabhupada says. So we were walking, and then all of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada stopped at a tree. So in the botanical gardens, all the trees have labels. So he said, what's the label to this tree? He picked the leaves and started crushing them and smelling them. And then they said, Srila Prabhupada, that's a camphor tree. And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, that's Radharani's favorite fragrance. And then one Prabhu came up and said, Srila Prabhupada, you say that we're living in Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha means without anxiety. But I find that I'm always in anxiety. So what to do? And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, in this human form of life, you will always be in anxiety, but you've got to pick what kind of anxiety you want to be in. Do you want to be in spiritual anxiety, or do you want to be in material